Maybe I read the second part. Huh? Is it okay?
We are live. We'll give everyone a few moments to get into the stream. I'll play a little bit of music while we're waiting for our viewers to come in. Welcome everyone, we'll be getting started in just a few moments. All right, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We are so very pleased to welcome Zülfü Livaneli and Indran Amirthanayagam. I'll get that right letter. Thank you so much for being here, everyone who's viewing. We're so excited to discuss Zülfü's recent release of Disquiet, a novel. But if you're new here, let me tell you a little bit about who we have joining us tonight. First off, of course, we are Lost City Books, a used, new, and rare bookstore owned by Adam located in Adams Morgan, Washington, D.C. We are run by a close-knit team of some of DC's coolest kids, artists, educators, musicians, writers, and of course, avid readers all coming together to create a unique environment and curate an eclectic selection of books. I am your host for this evening. My name is Shady Rose, and I am so pleased to be here. Zülfü Livaneli is Turkey's best-selling author, a celebrated composer and film director, and a political activist. Widely considered one of the most important Turkish cultural figures, he is known for his novels that interweave diverse social and historical backgrounds, figures, and incidents, including the critically acclaimed Bliss, which was the winner of the Barnes & Noble Discover Great New Writers Award, Layla's House, My Brother's Story, and The Eunuch of Constantinople, which have been translated into 37 languages, won numerous international literary prizes, and been turned into movies, stage plays, and operas. That is incredibly impressive. I'd love to see one of these operas as well. I hope we can talk about that a little bit later. Indran Amirthanayagam, author of The Migrant States and the editor of the Beltway Poetry Quarterly, is a Sri Lankan-American poet, diplomat, essayist, and translator in English, Spanish, French, Portuguese, and Haitian Creole. He is a diplomat in the U.S. Foreign Service, based currently in Rockville, Maryland. He was born in 1960 in Colombo, Ceylon, now Sri Lanka. When he was 8 years old, he moved with his family to London, England, and at age 14, his family moved again to Honolulu, Hawaii, where he began writing. He studied at Puna House School in Honolulu and played cricket at the Honolulu Cricket Club. He then studied English literature at Haverford College, where he also captained their cricket team during his last year. He has a master's in journalism from Columbia University. About Disquiet. Disquiet transports the reader to the contemporary Middle East through the stories of Melkinaz, Yazidi Syrian refugee, and Hussein, a young man from the Turkish city of Mardin near the Syrian border. Passionate about helping others, Hussein begins visiting a refugee camp to tend to the thousands of poor and sick streaming into Turkey fleeing ISIS. There he falls in love with Melkinaz, whom his disapproving family will call the devil, who seduced him, and their relationship sets further tragedy in motion. A nuanced meditation on the nature of being human and an empathetic, probing look at the past and present of these Mesopotamian lands, Disquiet gives voice to the people's faiths, histories, and stories that have swept through this region over centuries. Featured today in a lovely New York Times review and recently on NPR, Disquiet is receiving wonderful acclaim with this US release. And so without further ado, I would love to welcome our wonderful guests for this evening. Hello.
Good evening.
Hello. Hello. Thank you for having me here. Good. Hello, everyone. So I'm pleased to be with you, Shady and Indran. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. I know that Disquiet for me was an incredible read that really touched a lot of different parts of my heart. So I'm very excited to discuss this book with you today. I know that you wanted to open with a reading for us so that our audience can get a sense of how this book feels and how it sounds with your voice. So we would love to start with that.
With my some broken English. Okay. I'm going to read a part that Angelina Jolie is visiting a refugee camp in southeastern Turkey, Mardin. The private jet that brought Angelina Jolie landed at the remote Mardin airport at 20. The deputy governor and an official delegation received her and the UN representatives who were with her. The journalists were kept at a distance and everyone was climbing over each other to get a picture from behind a row of policemen. The delegation whisked Angelina into an official black car that immediately sped away. We didn't know at the time, but we found out later that she was taken to the Hilton Garden Inn, which is outside Mardin and on the road to ruins of Dara. When Hakan, the photographer, and I found out, we went to the hotel, but all we could see was the fountain at the entrance. The hotel had been cordoned off and the roads were blocked. It wasn't just us, they weren't letting anyone in. The bazooka-like lenses hanging from Hakan's neck didn't help us at all, and our efforts to get a photo from a distance were to no avail. Men, I said to Hakan, what the hell are we doing here? They are not going to let us see the woman. It's as if she's some kind of sacred treasure, but she's just a person like us. Man, she's not an angel, she's not a goddess. Why is everyone going so crazy? The woman is probably going into the bathroom now. She's going to take a shower. She'll put on her bathrobe and have something to eat in her room. Then she'll get a good sleep while we stand out here miserably showing each other and craning our necks. But the newspaper is going to want at least one picture, objected Hakan. What we are going to do? Maybe one of the other photographers got a picture, ask around and see if anyone got one. If that doesn't work, we can download a picture from the internet and edit it. The woman is constantly going to camps in Afghanistan and Pakistan. I became irritated by the crowds and the commotion, and I kept complaining about this woman who wasn't aware of any of this. She'd woken me from a dream and brought me back to the modern world and to journalism. And I wanted to stay within the atmosphere of the angel. I wasn't interested in this angel, but in the other angel, the one who had gone missing. And I suppose I really was angry at Jolie. Her coming here from the glittering world of Hollywood and visiting the camps for 2 hours wasn't going to do anything but add to the pain of the people there. If I got the chance to talk to her, I'd say that these people are all here because of your policies, or rather your government's policies. What right did you have to send your planes and soldiers and ships across the ocean and destroy these people's country, to bring more bloodshed to the already blood-stained lands of the Middle East? Fooling the world with lies about weapons of mass destruction, making millions of people homeless, spreading terror in our lands. Was this what the United Nations was established for? Of course, the poor woman wasn't responsible for any of this. She didn't dictate these policies, but she didn't realize that she was just going to increase the suffering of the people whose pain she was coming to lighten. She was highlighting the chasm between her world and that of these cold, hopeless, ragged refugees. She was a symbol that reminded them another life was possible, increasing their despair, deepening their pain. Because after she got on her private jet and returned to her glittering life, they would continue to bury children who died from carbon monoxide poisoning from the stoves in those tents. 2 years ago, I interviewed a student who'd been tortured by the police. They had locked him in a cellar and tortured him until he was crippled. For some reason, he became obsessed with a canary in a cage that was hanging in the cellar. He told me he had hated this canary. Its beautiful song had reminded him of the outside world, of springtime, lovers strolling arm in arm, made him think of freedom, and this made everything even more painful. The canary became a symbol of beauty, and he hated it because there was no place for beauty in that cellar. Now I was thinking that perhaps Jolie was a canary, an angel disguised not as a peacock, but as a canary. We went back to the hotel and went over the day's news. Thanks to a touching example of solidarity among news photographers, Hakan had managed to get a picture from another photographer of Jolie leaving the plane. We'd managed to save the day. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. I'm curious, what stands out about that passage to you as a representation of a perspective in this book?
This passage is, try to show the contrast between the life in the refugee camp with the utter despair and the coming an angel from outside world. As I described, it's painful because, I mean, this is not a constant cure or nothing helping them. I mean, just to say another life is possible. That's why this is a part of the novel. Of course, it doesn't represent the whole story, but this is kind of contrast in the book.
It's a novel that doesn't compromise. It shows, it tells various incidents, and it allows the reader to just absorb them and interpret them. And one of the things I feel like I have to defend Angela Jolie, but what I mean by that is not Angelina Jolie, the actress, but all that she comes from, the West, the aid givers, they brought the guns and the wars, but they also bring the aid and the food assistance and the assistance to the refugees. So can you talk about the West as opposed to the East? Because I think that's a very big theme in this book.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, it's not a big evil. No, the West is not a big evil. I grew up in
Not an evil, sorry, a big theme in the book. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm a little critical to international organizations because I myself was a goodwill ambassador of United Nations, and I served almost 15 years there. And I visited camps, and I was in all over the world. But at the end of the day, this kind of meetings don't help to the people there. And also, I resigned in 2016 from United Nations UNESCO because there was a cruel bombing to a city in the southeastern Turkey by the government. And at the same time, United Nations organized a humanitarian summit in Istanbul. And I told them this is not the way to do it. I mean, not to handle this thing. I mean, you cannot do it just to justify this bombing. But they didn't take care, so I resigned. So that's why I'm a little critical, because the problem is so deep, so big, millions of people now. I mean, if you go, okay, of course, United Nations and the volunteers, and especially Médecins Sans Frontières, so they are really, I mean, they're helping. So I described it in my book. But this is just a part about this contrast scene.
Right. Yeah, no, that's just one subject in the book. There's so many to talk about.
Yeah. Yes.
Should I go ahead, Jed, with a couple of questions regarding sort of larger subjects in the book?
Please.
There are two phrases that are repeated in the book. One is, "I was a human being," and the other, "You can't protect me any longer, mother, not even if you took me and put me back in your womb." And these haunting phrases, "I was a human being," and "that you can't put me back in your womb," come early in the novel, and then they come later in the novel as well. And other, so talk to us, talk to the readers, future readers of this book, about those two phrases and how the role they play in the novel.
These two phrases are like leitmotif in the book. I repeat, like in a musical piece. I mean, it comes back, but it's also meaningful because it is not I'm a human being. I was a human being. Because the story goes, the little girl says this, and this little girl is still alive, but she feels that she's not human being anymore after the slavery in the hands of ISIS, and what she experienced. I mean, not humanity. I mean, she's just a body. I mean, she lost her soul and everything. She said, "I was a human being once." So that was a very striking sentence. And the second one as well. And so I started the novel with these two sentences, and I continue to repeat it because, I mean, you're a poet, and we are in love with. If you find good lines, we
yes. and repeating them, they take on different meanings, and each time, almost like a prayer, you say a prayer, and it evokes images. Another theme in this book is the desert, and also the part of Turkey where this takes place, which is I think the part of Turkey close to Syria and Iraq, not the part of Turkey close to Europe. So can you talk about that, this Turkey, this West and Eastern country, and the dilemmas that are raised in the issues of West and East that you raise in your book?
Yeah. we everybody says Turkey is a bridge. Yes, it's a bridge between West and East. I mean West with Greece, our neighbors, Greece, Bulgaria, and Romania, and Georgia and Russia, and one part we are European. We used to have a big state until the First World War. They called Ottoman. This was a vast empire, and it was included Anatolia, Caucasia, and Middle East, and Balkan until Belgrade. Then they lost in Northern Africa, and they lost all this territory and the lands during the First World War, and all the refugees from those different cultures, from Europe, from Caucasia, from Middle East, from North Africa, came to Turkey, and they established a new nation state here without having a nation. So it was kind of forced nation to create here, and the much smaller land, much smaller population. So that's why we have every kind of people here in this country. We have different traditions. We have, I mean, some part of Turkey is like Greece, western part especially. Some parts are like Georgia, the Black Sea coast, and we are surrounded with three seas. You know, it's like a peninsula, and there is a clashes between the different civilizations here. We live in what we call clashes of civilization within this country. I mean, this is actually, I mean, we are struggling against the polarization, but unfortunately, we are a polarized country now between Islamic movements, which govern the country now these days, secular people, millions of secular people, and the Kurdish people. I mean, those three poles try to find a way to live together in coexistence, but this is difficult. I think identities are getting spread now. I mean, I don't know what we are going to do, but I'm writing articles and doing things about just to get together again, Turkey. But I mean, I'm seeing this like the ships are going to different directions.
Yes, but then is there a way, is there a third way, or is there a way to bring these three Turkeys together in your view? I mean, is there any optimism that you have?
I don't know. That would be the one solution would be very nice to be full member of European Union, because we have a lot of relations, and we are the candidate, and negotiations has already been started. And but I'm not so optimistic these days. Okay. So I'm not, because I mean this polarization and also the international plays, because geostrategically it's a very important country. One part of Turkey is Middle East, other part is close to Russia and Ukraine, and you know, other part is Western countries. I mean, this is really very crucial. Then that's why all the in the history, everybody crossed this land. Crusaders and the Mongols, Tamerlans, Islamic sources, Islamic armies, almost everybody crossed this. And the Byzantine Empire, of course, our heritage is Byzantine, 1,000 years, right. Big Byzantine Empire in Constantinople.
So to just to cite the title of your novel, there's a disquiet in the Turkish soul, or
yes,
in your mind, yeah.
What I feel is this disquietness, really disquiet. So the authorities didn't like this title. When it was released 3 years ago, the advertising because my publisher make big advertisements, I mean, of the billboards and other big things, but it was banned by the authorities because they don't want to see disquiet so big around, because they think that everything is in peace.
Everything's in peace. So how did you get around that in the end? You were able to sell the novel but not advertise it?
No, it's not advertised, but it's sold now. Until now, it's 850,000, almost 850,000 copies
in Turkey,
sold, and it goes to 1 million now.
That's amazing. Yeah, wonderful. So a good book wins through. Tell us about the desert, because there's a kind of wisdom that comes from the desert. There's also sort of nostalgia in this book for the desert and for that town which the character goes to, and a different way of life, a slower way of life, yes, with prejudices and different belief systems, but can you talk about that nostalgia for a
Yeah.
different kind of life? Go ahead.
This is not my nostalgia. This is
Yeah,
my protagonist nostalgia because I'm not from that region. My family, my ancestors come from Georgia, not in the States, but in Caucasia.
right, right.
Yeah, it's that's why I'm a Caucasian.
Well, you're an inventor. You've created a character,
Yeah,
but you've done it so well that I, as a reader,
yeah,
feel that
yeah.
talking about yourself.
But in my previous book, which was published by other press as well, Serenade for Nadia, I wrote the novel as first singular person I as a woman.
I see. Okay.
So it's possible. I mean, so then you have to the empathy. I mean, empathy must create kind of identification with your protagonists.
Right, right.
Anyway, Mardin. This is the town called Mardin. Is very interesting town. It's very close to Syria. I never been to Syria and other Middle Eastern countries, but when I visited Mardin with my family, I was invited by the governor, and and my daughter said, "This is another country. We came to another country." Yes, it's another country. We don't know the. Of course, we speak Turkish, but their main language, I mean, they speak Arabic and they speak Aramaic. Aramaic is the language which the New Testament has been written, because the Aramaic. And when I visited the monastery, I asked the priest, I mean, are you really speaking Aramaic these days? Because this is the early Christianity, I mean, the first language of Christianity and Jesus Christ language. I said, are you really speaking between, I mean, for daily things and things? He said, yes. And I said, I know only one sentence, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. I asked, what does it mean? Because this is Jesus Christ's last words.
Ah,
That, yeah, of course, God, God, why did you leave me? So
right.
they're really speaking about, I mean, this language, isn't it amazing? And they live in the history, in the buildings, and also there's a Assyrian community there, Christian people, Jewish people, and Armenian people. There were more, but after this, all these incidents and things, they are less, unfortunately now. But they really live in the history now. And when you talk about that, they have a wonderful castle, amazing. They organize a dinner for us. So I asked them, I mean, it's a very impressive castle. So they are proud. So Tamerlan wanted to take this, conquer this, but he couldn't. So this is just yesterday.
Yesterday, right.
They're talking like yesterday.
Is there a contemporary literature in Amharic then there?
Where?
Is there a contemporary poetry, fiction being written in the Amharic language then? In that
In Aramaic, I don't know.
Aramaic language, sorry.
Aramaic language must be, yeah. But this is an ancient language. This is an old language like Latin. I mean, before Latin. So I don't know. I mean, how many people speaks, and I don't know anybody who will write in Aramaic.
Tell us about the Yazidi people, because the
Yeah.
central character of the story is in it. And
Very
one of the wonderful things about this book is how much history you learn about and discover reading it. It's, besides enjoying the story or being moved by the story, you also are learning, entering a different world, a lost world, at least for me. Go ahead.
Lost World. In Lost City books, we can talk about
Yes.
the Lost World. Yes. Anyway, Yazidi people, I mean, they are really, I feel very bad for them, because, I mean, they were continuously slaughtered by all religions, and Islam, Christianity, I mean, Jews, and all other civilizations there, because with a false belief, they believe that they worship to Satan. Because it's very simple. they have in their religion, they have a fallen angel. But the fallen angel has been forgiven by the God, and that's why they worship. Of course, it's peacock angel. Peacock angel was fallen, but it is before the Old Testament. In monotheist religions, they interpreted this fallen angel as devil, as Satan. It's a misunderstanding, and people think that they are worshiping the devil, which is not. So this misunderstanding caused a lot of massacres, genocide throughout the history. And what I say for them is they are the broken branch of humanity. So they suffer a lot. And lately, ISIS, the cruel ISIS, destroyed their life. And a lot of tragical stories. I wanted to be careful by writing this novel in writing process, because I want to be as distant as possible, because there are more tragic stories I learned, and it was possible to write it in more emotional tone, but I think it was not the right attitude. I tried to keep myself as distant as possible, I told you, because I mean, it is maybe more efficient to put it that way. I don't want to create melodrama out of these stories.
No, and you don't, but by keeping that distance, the horror becomes that much more manifest, and really, really difficult at times to sort of manage, emotionally. It's a funny thing. By keeping your distance, you make the horror that much more present somehow. At least.
But I think this is a way of creating things in literature.
Yeah.
Once I read from Franz Kafka, and he said, you can grab the reality through surrealism. So this is true, because creating novel and poem is an artificial process. It's an artificial process. I mean, you come from reality, you go to surrealism or creating an artificial process to catch the reality again. I mean, this is the way I think that the structure of the novel.
A surreal reality, a kind of hyper reality, a sort of extreme reality. Understanding of reality.
Otherwise, the daily reality is not reality. If we put a tape recorder or the phone in Lost City Books and record everything and tape it, type it, it's not a novel. It's not. It will look artificial. Nobody will do it.
Can I ask a question about ISIS? Because I think that's still on people's minds. Why is ISIS so cruel to these Yazidi peoples, for example? And what is it that motivates the ISIS?
Not only Yazidi people.
Right.
They are really cruel. They burn people. They cut heads. They beheaded people. So it's really strange. And they are, strange enough, they have soldiers from England, from European countries, from different kind of wars, thirsty for young men, thirsty for bloodshed, blood, and violence. So they come and they easily can kill people and rape girls and everything. So this is kind of how can I say this? But it's aimless terrorism, I think. What they claim, we are going to continue Islam, Muhammad's way, and something like this. And I heard a very interesting speech by an academic who's from ISIS, and he made a doctorate, a PhD on Islam, and he was addressing to President Obama at that time. And he said, very interesting, he said, Mr. President, you accuse that ISIS doesn't represent Islam, but I have PhD on Islam, and I can prove that this represents Islam. This is the true Islam, what ISIS do. Horrible, isn't it? I don't know, because Turkey is an Islamic country as well, but we have different kind of Islam, much more tolerant, and not this kind of things. I mean, not this violence, but this is in Islam, Arabic nationalism, Arabic traditions, and the belief comes together. It interferes with each other. It's an Arabic religion, but Turks adopted, and Iranians, for instance, which is strange to me. Persepolis, I mean, so deep, big culture, Persepolis, and Iran. Why they became Islam?
Islamic,
I don't know.
right?
And Egypt. I mean, so we read about Ramses and all these Egyptian things. Why they became Islam now? I mean, this is really strange.
Uh, can you talk about why, a very broad question, why you chose this story to tell? What inspired you to write this particular story?
When I see Mardin, I wanted to write something about that atmosphere. First of all, Mesopotamia, and it's a magic atmosphere there. And I felt the same thing when I visited Arizona, Sedona.
Okay.
I felt the same kind of mysticism. And when I visited the Christian Orthodox monk's place, Mount Athos in Greece, same things. I mean, you never feel the daily reality, but you live in a saga. So that's why I wanted to create something there. And also, I read a lot about these Yazidi people, how they are suffering. So I created my novel and to tell their sufferings to the world.
Are the Yazidi people at the moment, are they living in these areas in peace or not?
No, not in peace, but
Okay.
they are in danger. But they are in Iraq, in Syria, in Turkey. Refugees are almost safe. I mean, they live in a very bad situation, but in Turkey, in refugee camps, but safe. I mean, but it is nobody knew about Yazidis. Nobody heard about Yazidis, and now it's coming kind of popular in a good sense because Nadia Murad, one of Yazidi girls who suffered that bad these experiences, got the Nobel Prize for Peace, and it is heard. I mean, their voice must be heard. So that's why I try to help these people writing this. But I'm not a social realist novelist. I'm writing the real novel, but I take my people from the real life, my protagonists.
Yeah, you've done a good deed writing this novel. At least you've introduced this reader to a world I did not know. You've given, I think about preservation and conservation reading this novel. Conservation of lost languages, of
Yeah.
lost ways of life, of foods, recipes from the past, um, a living tradition, trying to recreate a tradition despite war and despite all the pillaging of war. I'm a Tamil from Sri Lanka, so I come from a country
I
that
know.
no longer exists. I mean, Ceylon no longer exists. The Tamil fight for
I
independence
know.
was lost. So I sympathize with that sense of the notion of the migrant and what the migrant loses and also the refugee loses. But at the same time, human beings everywhere and all species are losing all the time, right? We're losing, we're on the way towards extinction, whether we are humans or elephants or ants. So, what is the role of the writer facing extinction? I mean, what advice can you give listeners?
Yeah, I respect the local cultures and local colors a lot in all over the world. And especially in our country, we used to have a very cosmopolitan country and until the nation state period. our state, our empire was built by Armenians, Greeks, Turks, Kurds, Caucasians, Albanians, Serbians, all Balkan countries. I mean, we were together. We were living, and we used to have a big Jewish community, and they came from Spain to Turkey 500 years ago. So we used to have a very harmonized, cosmopolitan civilization. Only in Istanbul, the more than 20 languages have been spoken. But now we are losing. And there are some languages, especially more in Caucasia, they are dying. The language is dying because there's one person speak this. When he gets older and dying, and then language is dying as well. So these are really tragic. But another danger is standardization. When I read the book by Henry Kissinger called "Does America Need a Foreign Policy?" And I know him. I had a dinner with him, and I asked this question because he said there, America is the biggest power. Even the Roman power was not as great as America. And not only that, but America put standard to popular culture in all over the world, which is true. I love Asian countries. I visit frequently. And when I got a plane and go 10 hours, fly 10 hours, and I see the same movies in multiplex cinemas, movie theaters. And I see the same chains of food stores and, the fashion stores. This standardization is really, I feel very miserable against this kind of standardization, because we have one monotonous country now. All the companies, more stronger than the states, the multinationals, are creating, one platform in the world. So this is pity.
Yeah, it's a pity because you have the universal impulse, the kind of create a world community. But then if the community is only created in order to eat at McDonald's or to watch the latest,
So America is, of course, I'm talking about American popular culture, not American culture. I mean, if the people of the world read William Faulkner and Hemingway, that's perfect for me. But popular culture, especially with this platform, with Netflix and others, so it's everywhere, and everybody is talking that way, and everybody is imitating because America is really powerful, and the culture is dominating now. Popular culture, mass culture is dominating all over the world. So this is not good for the world. This is not good either for America, because America is kind of cosmopolitan country, got influence from the world, from all over the world.
Right.
So they created this big art and everything coming from different sources. And now this is one way direction, and America doesn't get so many things from the world. So this is not good for America either.
Very good point, arresting point you make. I think all Americans need to sit back and reflect on what you just said, and we can see if we can go back to "I contain multitudes," Whitman's line about the American.
I would love to ask both of you a question regarding what you just said, Zulfu. When you think about the homogenization, the global homogenization of culture that's happening, and how so much of what we call popular culture is really Western popular culture being sort of purchased and pushed to smother, smaller artists or local cultural artists. What do you see as the independent artist's role in resisting that machine and preserving the legacy of culture that brought them as an independent artist to where they are, and to maintain that around the world?
Yeah, I think the publishing industry became, the majority of publishing industry became so commercial, and it's like big companies, and the CEO of these companies mostly not coming from the literary world. I'm very happy to having a publisher like Judith Gurevich and other friends in other press. But I worked with the major companies in the States. And let me tell you something. I used to have an agent, literary agent, and he told me a story about one of the big publishing houses, one of the biggest publishing houses. And they replaced the CEO with somebody from the finance. And the journalist asked him, what kind of books you like? And he said, I don't read books. I hire people to read books for me. I think this is the reality now. I work with some very, prominent publishing houses, for instance, Gallimard in France, or some other houses, it's reputable houses. But they are also under the pressure of this commercial market now. So they have to sell. Otherwise, there are pressure from the companies, financing people and the CEOs, maximizing the profit. And this is not the best moment to publish the books, I think.
Yeah. Well, precisely, I would say that's why, Lost City Books, we have to celebrate and support this venture and this initiative, and support small presses and independent bookstores, and
Very,
and distributors of independent presses. There's one press. Try to support in your own small way. It's like your own vote. In a democracy, you're voting for a candidate. You're voting for a way of life. You're voting for a
yeah,
multiple way of life, and try to be. And you have to believe that your vote means something. That it
yeah,
has some value. And otherwise, if you give up being an optimist, you could fall into a rather deep well of morose well, where I tend to be a little bit like Candide or something, but maybe that's a bit silly. But you have to cultivate your own garden, wherever it is, and make
yeah.
sure you put lots of wildflowers, and let the weeds go run riot, and make it as do what you can in your own. It's about fighting climate change. You reduce the carbon footprint, your own particular carbon footprint.
Yeah.
Go
The
ahead.
end of Candide, Voltaire Candide, this conversation takes place in Istanbul with a gardener.
That's right.
What is the meaning of the world? Candide asks, and the gardener says, raise your garden. Grow your garden. Take care of your garden. This is the meaning of the life of life. Anyway, so because of course democracy and votes, this is another important issue. Pluralism is necessary for a democracy, but we experience here in a majority. Majority is somehow it's kind of could be a dictatorship. When you get the majority of the votes, you can conduct the country. When whatever you like. But pluralism is very important, and the democracy must protect the rights of the minorities,
Yes,
not
yes.
majority. This means democracy.
That is such an important thing you just said. Protecting the rights of the minorities,
Yeah,
enshrining them in the Constitution,
yeah.
and yet they're not. They have to be protected every day.
And also,
Uh,
democracy must restore itself because there are elections, and through these elections, if a democracy can restore itself, it can be mistakes in democracies, go to wrong ways sometimes.
so,
But uh, if it's able to restore it,
right.
go to the main road again, that's okay, acceptable. Otherwise, it's terrible.
You know, the word polis, community, like politics, the root of politics. Do you consider yourself a political writer in the sense the stories you choose and all that? Can you
No,
talk about that?
not at all. Not at all. I don't like this engaged literature or aimed literature or message. I don't like this word message. Sometimes they ask me, what is your message in this? Well, no, I don't have any message. If I have a message, I can take my phone and write an SMS. No, this is not a message. I create an atmosphere and protagonists. And but these protagonists are not in this space. I mean, they live in daily life. So they have some impacts and some different kind of impacts and conditions they live in. So through my protagonist's eyes and psychology, I describe the other matters. Otherwise, it's better to write nonfiction then.
I think it's very beautiful what you just said about the atmosphere that you create,
Yeah.
and you create atmosphere. I think that's an amazing and lovely way of describing the feeling one has reading your book, and that you and the daily life. I mean, you know, the character who goes to the coffee shop and sits every Sunday waiting for her to come, and eventually she comes, and then there's a meeting. He gives her a present. She says, "Do you want to talk about that a little bit?"
And also, she's very proud. I mean,
She's
she
very proud.
doesn't want to any mercy, any compassion from anyone, because I I wrote the compassion is also part of cruelty. So compassion is not a balm for cruelty. I mean, you cannot save the people with compassion. It's necessary, of course, but you cannot solve all the problems with compassion.
But do you think that a love story could still result in a sequel to this book?
Yeah, it can be. Some people ask me that, but I don't know. I want to leave it that way. I mean, so then not happy end, not the other end, but this is because the questions are still open. It
Yeah,
must
it's an
be in
ambiguous
our
end.
minds, yeah, in our minds. What I believe in literature, I used to read a lot 19th century's Russian and the 20th century American novels in my childhood in Ankara. I was big fan of the Faulkner, I told you, and Hemingway. And I learned from Hemingway to write about the one piece of iceberg, not try to describe whole iceberg. I mean, just to give a hint so then reader can create the rest. So this is my technique to use. I don't want to write so many words and pages and analyzes the psychology, other things. I show the people and reader can imagine the psychology. I don't want to go to details. So that's why I mean this American literature did it once, it did very well. So that's great writers. And then I had a strange feeling that the great literary tradition passed from 19th century Russians, from Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, Gogol, to Americans. But in that period.
In that period.
For instance, Faulkner, I mean, Light and August, it's like Crime and Punishment for me.
Okay.
And also atmosphere is very important. Without being in America, I was able to feel, or even smell the South, the cotton fields.
That's right.
And the work there. I mean, so he created and the heat. So, I mean, it was so visible. And I was feeling when I was reading this.
Great. I think we'll be going to questions now from the audience.
Similarly, regarding your last point, with Disquiet, I definitely experienced that very same thing. Something that stands out in my mind very starkly is something we talked about earlier with the desert and the red sand, and then the sweat making it appear that the person was covered in blood. It was so striking, and it took me a moment to realize it had only been described in a few sentences. It was very poignant in that way.
Really happy that I managed to have you in literary journey.
Yes.
We do have questions from the audience, and I would like to remind our viewers now, if you do have any questions for our guests tonight, you can type them as comments under this video that you're watching right now, and we will answer them. The first question that I have is from Emily, who says, can you please talk more about the response to the book in Turkey?
About what?
Can you please talk more about the response to the book in Turkey?
Response. Yeah, okay. It was well received by the readers, and there was a great impact because big press coverage. Not only the readers, of course, I have a huge reading community, but also the press and TV, the interviews. And we have almost 5 million refugees in Turkey now. And common people are afraid of that they are going to take their job and different culture. They don't understand each other. And they are in the big cities now. They are opening stores and something like this. But same kind of, racism is increasing. What about these people? They are maybe criminals, like that. I mean, typical racism. But through this book, I received a lot of messages and response from the audience that they say, I mean, it's very good that we understand them now. We understand how these people are suffering. It's not their fault coming here to come here. So that was a kind of translator between the souls of two people, because we are very far to Syria. We are borders, but the people are very far. I mean, culture is very far.
Thank you. Yes, I'm interested too in the, in the broader impact that you maybe expected or you foresaw as you were writing this book, considering that your books are translated into so many languages. Did you have sort of different areas of the world that you thought, oh, over here it might be received this way, and then perhaps in the US it'll be received this way? Or did you not come in with any preconceptions and it was simply to put the book out there?
I just simply put the book because I write, and I think every writer writes first to his or her readers in the mother language, because the importance is there. It is translated to other languages, which is so nice. But I have always, I have a doubt that if they understand in different cultures, if they understand or not. But this is interesting. One of my novels became well known in China. It was translated to Mandarin, and I visited China. I was invited by the publishing house. And during the many interviews, journalists said they liked the book called Bliss. They said, it looks like China. I said, what is it? I mean, the Turkey is a totally different country than China. Why? They said, no, it looks like China because we have a country also like yours, torn between modernity and tradition. So this was so, great to me. So they understand. And also in Russia, I speak, of course, Russia was our neighbor and we had so many relations throughout the history. What they understood very well. I mean, I went to different cities for conferences or press conferences and lectures. So they really understood us. This is, I think, the aim. If you can reach to different cultures, I think it means that you really created human beings. It touched to other human beings. You can, and if you go deep into your culture, if you go deep in the soul of your people, you can reach anybody. You can reach to anybody in the world.
Magnificent. I just want to add one quick point, which you are a poet. I mean, I know that you have published a book of poetry, and you're a poet in the way you sketch, and the way you tell your. So it's a kind of a prose poem. This whole story. So you have the both. You present the best of both worlds. I mean, though the poet, you present poetry, but you're telling a story at the same time. So I congratulate you for that.
Thank
for
you.
your attention to language and the sounds of words and
Thank you.
the atmosphere, as you put it.
Thank you very much. I think that must be a certain kind of poetry in the storytelling. And it's the problem of balance. If you write a very poetic, with full of metaphors, and I mean that kind of poetry, it hurts it wounds the story. And in storytelling, it must be a hidden poetry.
Yeah.
You understand what I mean? I mean, hidden poetry. You have to feel it without reading it.
You also quote two very great poets in your novel. I mean, Nazim Hikmet and Constantine Cavafis. No, Cavafi.
Yes,
You
yes, yes.
can't.
I love those guys. I mean, so then they are so great. Cavafis is from Alexandria, Greek poet, and Nazim Hikmet is our Pushkin, the father of Turkish poetry. I mean, so he was extraordinary. He died in 63 in Moscow in exile.
That's right. That's right. Well, a poet I've learned a lot from, reading him in English and in French.
Yeah.
His poem
Yeah.
about, that he's writing on the train crossing Europe, just a couple of years before he dies, 1990.
You mean Nazim Hikmet?
Nazim Hikmet's poem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, some of his poems were composed by American singers that time, Paul Robeson and Pete Seeger. They sang his poetry, yeah, and also John Baez.
Very good. I must look for those.
We did it together with John.
This does put me in mind of another point that you are kind of just introduced, Indran, and that you both, I think, will have insights about. But Zulfu, as a person who is a very well-loved artist in multiple fields, you're a musician, a poet, an author, and also a political activist. And you have all of these different intersecting forms that your art takes on. I'm curious to hear, and Indran, I believe you also have insights into this as part of your life. I'm curious to hear about how art manifests and intersects across these different mediums for you, especially being a multimedia artist and as well as a political activist, and how these things come together into one unit of person.
I mean, to be political activist is not my choice. I don't want to do it, but I have to do it because the countries like Turkey or Latin American countries, or maybe your country, Iran, people knock your door and ask something because there are a lot of human rights violations and the violation to freedom of expression and so many things. There are writers in jail, so that's why you have to act. You have to do something, not only through writing and poem or novels, but as a person. Because if you have a personality, if your name is known, sometimes you go in front of prison to manifest, to say something about the prisoners, political prisoners. And that's why this is kind of the destiny, I think. So I know that in that age, I know that I cannot get rid of politics anymore, which I don't like.
I would just add that, ¿Dónde está la música? Where is the music? Is a line that Derek Walcott used to ask his students, when looking at a poem. So the music of language is key to the making of poems. So music and word making, poetry making are very closely related arts and the lyric. So you have singer-songwriters and poets like Leonard Cohen and Bob Dylan and so on. And these are inspirations. And one finds that there is really no difference between writing, at least from the song in lines, in lyrics, and writing it as a poem, And then the political activism, yes, I think your answer was very good. And you have no choice but to be active. And I think about you mentioned Nazim Hikmet, who died in exile and who spent many years of his life in jail. Uh, so suffering, and yet he managed, thankfully, to write even in those circumstances
Yeah.
on cigarette papers and get his poems out into the world. In my case, I've had a cushier lifestyle, but I write also about these wars in songs and in poems. So you just have to, but the activism, you have no choice. That's right. I was born with a gift of a golden voice, is the song from Leonard Cohen in the Tower
Yeah.
of Song.
Yeah.
uh, I That's a very beautiful and arrogant statement, but you are born with a gift, and
Yeah.
you have to
Yeah.
exercise it.
Yeah.
Whatever your gift is.
So that's great. So I composed almost 20 poems by Nazım Hikmet. It was forbidden in Turkey. His poetry was forbidden, but I did it. And all these songs became kind of national anthem in Turkish people. And I also composed Kavafis, and also Louis Aragon, Bertolt Brecht, and Paul Éluard, especially Paul Éluard, Liberté, Freedom.
Will you let us know how to listen, how we can hear those songs?
You can on YouTube you can say Livaneli Freedom. You can hear Freedom because it is well known. I mean, everybody is saying. Even I told you John Baez did it, and so my music is not just the music. It's between literature, poetry, and music. I always mix the things. That's why I got an award from Sanremo, Italy, with a Songwriters Award. And when I received this offer, I asked who did it before. They said Leonard Cohen, Leo Ferre, and they said Bob Dylan. Okay, I said, this is my case. So I'm not an entertainer. No, never. No. I write ballads.
Right. And you would not question Bob Dylan being awarded the Nobel Prize.
This is another very strange case. But I want to talk to you about answering your question. I mean, so I was very active using art and to get help from art for the conflict resolution. Because, there is always tension between Greece and Turkey. And sometimes they were close to war. There were wars, of course, between two countries. And kind of hatred. So I started in the 60s, I started to collaborate with my dear friend, Mikis Theodorakis. He's a great composer, and you may know him as a composer of Zorba the Greek, his famous melody everywhere, and plays everywhere. And he's well known in the world. So we collaborated and we did concerts together in Greece and in Turkey and Europe. So through these concerts, we collected Greek people and Turkish people together with the big press campaigns, and we established friendship society between two countries. And also we made a concert in Town Hall in New York, Broadway, with Maria Ferranturi. So these all activities in years helped the people. And then two foreign ministers, with Yorgo Papandreou from Greece and Cem from Turkey, they did really good things, but they thanked us. They said, okay, you put a carpet for us for the peace, and we walked on it. So I think the art really can help to soften the hearts of the people and can explain them each other. I did it with Armenian people who died recently. Jivan Gasparian was a great Armenian artist who worked with Peter Gabriel and others. He played my melodies too. He died 2 days ago. I think without not journalism, not political discussions, but art. You can open every door with art.
That's wonderful. inspiring statement. Thank you.
Thank you.
I completely agree. Those words are going to stick with me for a long time. I would like to thank you again so much for joining us tonight. And if you have any final words or insights for our viewers who are going to come and buy your book, I would love to take this moment to offer them as well. To our viewers watching now, you can find a copy of Disquiet at Lost City Books. You can go onto our website, lostcitybookstore.com, and find it, or come on into our store on 18th Street and grab your copy there. Thank you again so much for joining us, the two of you. And if you would like to...
Thank you. I'm really grateful to you because I didn't know you, but you created a very friendly atmosphere and I felt comfortable with you to talk with friends. That's important. Thank you very much. I hope see you again if you come to Turkey. We have good seafoods. Please call me.
Thank you. I will.
Thank you. Do it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, everyone. Viewers, have a good night.
Thank you very much. All the best. Thank you so much.